Yeah, thank you. This is the last Sunday we're going to be dealing with this passage. Acts chapter 3, verse 1 through 11 is the paragraph we've been dealing with. And we're dealing with verse 11 today. And this is it. Goodbye. Then we're going to be moving into the Sermon on the Mount. Really excited about that. And if you want to be studying that ahead of time, we're going to spend at least 3 Sundays doing an overall view of the Sermon on the Mount, which is just a phenomenal passage, as you well know. We may find ourselves getting into the Sermon on the Mount and never getting out. It could very well be. This is it. This is our final, yes, this is the dwelling place. We've fallen into the hole and we'll never get out. It's not a bad hole to be in, is it? Amen. Thank you, thank you, thank you. One of the first things we learned in preaching classes is never apologize for your sermon. It's one of the first things we learn. Apologize this morning. I know good and well I'm going to go away from this service and I'm going to say, didn't do that good enough. That wasn't clear enough. Because the whole purpose of today is if Jesus could be revealed to you. If I could describe him like he is. If I could find the words to tell you the wonder, the attractiveness, beauty, the dynamic, the power, the person. If I could. And I know good and well I'm going to go away a failure today. So, dear Jesus, we bow in your presence, crying out to you that you would share yourself. We don't want this to be a session where we talk about you. We want this time together where you come and show us your face. We experience the wonder of your being. You bathe us in yourself. God, we're hurting. We got problems and we got stuff going on, God, and we got confusions and we got family situations and we got financial problems and we just got stuff, God. It clutters our lives and defeats us and depresses us. We got habits and we got guilt and God, the list just goes on and on. Could you just bathe us in yourself today? And could we go away feeling like, feel like I just got out of the shower? We love you today, and please speak to us. In your name we pray. Amen. Acts chapter 3, verse 1. Now Peter and John went up together into the temple, the hour of prayer, the 9th hour, and a certain man lame from his mother's womb was carried, whom they laid daily at the gate of the temple, which is called Beautiful, to ask alms for those who entered the temple, who, seeing Peter and John about to go into the temple, asked for alms. Fixing his eyes on him with John, Peter said, "Look at us." So he gave them his attention, expecting to receive something from them. Then Peter said, "Silver and gold I do not have, but what I do have I give you. In the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, rise up and walk." And he took him by the right hand and lifted him up, and immediately his feet and ankle bones received strength. So he, leaping up, stood, walked, entered the temple, walking with them, walking, leaping, and praising God. And all the people saw him walking and praising God. And then they knew that it was he who sat begging alms at the beautiful gate of the temple. And they were filled with wonder and amazement at what had happened to him. Now as the lame man who was healed held on to Peter and John, all the people ran together to them in the porch, which is called Solomon's, greatly amazed. Verse 11. Now as the lame man who was healed held on to Peter and John, all the people ran together to them in the porch, which is called Solomon's, greatly amazed. In the original language, the grammar, there's no question at all that the subject of that whole verse, verse 11, is the people. There's no question about that. The people. Big deal. The subject, the people. The verb is obviously ran together. That's the main verb. People ran together. And of course they were all amazed, obviously. Tells you their location. And we've already dealt with that amazement and to some extent as it came from the people and what they saw. And we dealt with that last Sunday, actually, in connection with verse 8. But the verse starts, and you realize in the Greek grammar, they front load the verses, the sentences. And what they put at the beginning, they put there for emphasis. It's like the big deal is this, what they put up front. This whole sentence, the subject and the verb of the people ran together, it's not up front. It's there. It's the content of the sentence, no doubt about that. But it isn't the focus of what he's trying to say in verse 11. What he's trying to say in verse 11 is front-loaded in that opening statement. Now, as the lame man who was healed held on to Peter and John. That's the big deal of the verse. The rest is informational and ties in, of course, to verse 8 and verse 9, but it's not really the big emphasis of verse 11. So you come to this statement, now as the lame man who was healed held on to Peter and John. It's an interesting statement. It looks like it would be 6 or 7 Greek words translated, but it's only 2. So we've added a lot in there to cause it to make sense. And as you look at the translation, the 2 words that are translated, that opening statement, verse 11, now as the lame man who was healed held on to Peter and John. You got 2 words translating that whole thing, except for Peter and John. Those are words on their own. But now as the lame man who was healed held on. That is a translation of 2 words. The first word is translated now, which is a conjunction, obviously. And it's the conjunction D, which is, of course, the contrasting conjunction. And it adds on and brings another aspect. And obviously he's doing that. So he starts the verse with that, with this one word, D. Now, move the word now aside. So the phrase, as the lame man who was healed held on, is a translation of one word, just one word. And to make sense of it, we put all of those other words in there. It's the Greek word krautiro. Interesting word. Because it literally is a participle, which means it's not the main subject and it's not the main verb. It modifies this lame man. So he's trying to tell you some characteristic. See, this guy has been healed. This guy's been running around. He's been praising God. But he says, I want to give you one more characteristic of this individual. I want to tell you one more thing that this guy is really into. I want to add, yes, he's praising God. Oh, he's running around the temple. Oh, he's glorifying. Oh, yes, he's doing he's leaping. Yes. Oh, he's walking. Oh, yes, he's doing all that. And we admire all that and the miracle that's happened to him. But I got to add this one more thing. Above all these other things that he's been doing. Above all, are you getting this? Above all these other things he's been doing, here's one thing you got to get. He held on. He held on. He held on. It's really strong in the passage. The Greek word actually means to have power over, to grasp, to hold firmly. It means to adhere. It has the idea of joining. It has the idea to remain. It has the connotation of participating with. it has in some translations, it's translated like this: firmly clung. This guy firmly clung. Another translation says, kept his hands on. Another translation says, wouldn't let go of. Another translation says, threw his arms around. Now, obviously, it's Peter and John, and can you see this guy? He's throwing his arms around. He fully attached himself to. He joined. He just wouldn't turn loose. He's firmly holding. All of that kind of thing is going on there. And the emphasis is the fact that it's not temporary. And we'll get into this a little later as well, but it's in the present tense, which means it's happening now and will continue to happen. And of course, we got into that as you go through the passage, and we've talked about that so often, you're maybe tired of hearing that. But in chapter 3, verse 16, Peter in his sermon says, his name, through faith in his name, has made this man strong, whom you see and know. Yes, the faith which comes through him has given him this perfect soundness in the presence of you all. This guy was there while Peter was preaching this sermon. He didn't get his miracle and run around the temple and say, woo, I'm going. He's here. He's staying here. He's holding on. In fact, as you move to chapter 4, now they're in jail. 5,000 men have gotten saved after this sermon, and the leaders of Israel are upset, so they've put him in jail for the night, and they get him out the next morning. And it's interesting that when they interrogate them before the Sanhedrin, which we've said this so often, but it's just mind-boggling that this is a closed session of the leadership of Israel, and they've drugged these apostles, Peter and John, out of jail, and they brought them into this interrogation, and they're going over them with a fine-tooth comb, and guess who's there? This guy. And you say, how did he get there? Look at verse 10. Peter says, let it be known to you all and to all the people of Israel by the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, whom you crucified, whom God raised from the dead. By him this man stands here before you whole. How did he get there? Was he in jail with them? Was he so firmly attached to these guys that, hey, if they go to jail, I'm going to jail? There's no running away. This is holding on to. Isn't that remarkable? Go down to verse 14. The leaders of Israel, seeing the man who had been healed standing with them, they could say nothing against it. So you have no choice but to say, this guy reached out, grabbed a hold of these apostles, held on, wouldn't turn loose, went to jail with them or whatever, and he's just there consistently, constantly. Every time you look, good night, there he is. He is their shadow. He will not turn loose. He's holding on, firmly clung to, kept his hands on, wouldn't let go of, threw his arms around, grasped, held firmly. That's neat. That is very neat. 3 things I want you to get. Number 1, attraction. Now, the Greek word, again, krautero, which is, as we've described, held on, is used 47 times in the New Testament. There's no question it has a physical aspect to it. But there is also, and let me give you some of the physical aspect. In Mark chapter 6, verse 17, John the Baptist is taken prisoner, and it says Herod held on to him. So that's a physical aspect of it. In Matthew chapter 28, verse 9, the resurrection has taken place. These 2 women have come from seeing an angel, being sent by the angels to go to the disciples and tell them to go to Galilee. And when the resurrected Jesus appears to them, and it says they fell at his feet and held on, physically held on to his feet. That's a physical aspect. In that physical aspect, the word has the connotation of forcibly, aggressively. There's an aggression about this word that's present in these 47 times. That in this word, it is not just casual. It's not just, oh yeah. It's aggressive. It's pressing. It's holding firmly. There's an aggression about the word itself. But there is also a attitude aspect to this whole word. In other words, it isn't just used in a physical sense. Now, in our passage, it may be in the physical sense. You can't argue against that he actually held on to Peter and John. I have no problem with that. But there's no question that the word is also indicating a phenomenal attitude of attraction to this whole thing. That there is an attitude of attraction that's going on to what's happening in the Christian church, what's happening in the early church, the miracles that are taking place, what he's found now. This whole attitude he has an attitude of attraction. World religions have never been attractive to me. The Native American, for instance, has this concept of the great spirit of the sky, that doesn't attract me at all. It's vague. What's he look like? I don't know. Where is he? Well, he's out there. See, that doesn't do anything for me. See, the big man upstairs concept. What's his house like? I don't know. What's he doing? Don't know. What's he think? Have no idea. See, that's so vague. Buddha. Just go to the statue and take a look and you're repulsed. I mean, come on. See, nothing in the world religions just, attracts me. Nothing draws me. Salamanders coming down and visiting a guy and giving him, that doesn't do anything for me either. Lizards? See, nothing, and come on, I've studied through this stuff. Nothing in all of the world religions just, When I come to Christianity, about 95% of Christianity turns me off too. Why don't you come to church? Been there, not going again. Why don't you get involved in the church? No, thank you. Politics of the church makes me sick. I'm not interested. Why don't you come down for fellowship? Those bunch of hypocrites, not interested in fellowship with a bunch of hypocrites. I can find that at the bar, man. In fact, they're more honest down there than they are here. So I'm not interested at all. I'm not allured. Well, what about doctrine? Okay. You want to be a Christian? All right. What about doctrine? Well, what Christian are you? Well, I'm a Nazarene Christian. Oh, well, what's that all about? Well, I'm a Baptist Christian. Well, what's that all about? Well, I'm a Church of Christ Christian. Oh, you're the guys that don't have instruments in your church? See, I'm this, I'm that. See, all of that none of that at all attracts me. Oh, no music instruments in the church. I'm attracted. Oh, you guys sing hymns. I'm attracted. You sing choruses. I'm attracted. You have drums. I'm attracted. No. I can stay home and watch that on TV. See, nothing you've got in the church. In fact, most of what you've got in the church turns me off. So what we're going to do is dismiss this service and walk out the door and not come back. Because why would we want to be here? And what would attract us to come? And why would I drag out on a Sunday morning, man, with snow coming down, and it's cold and nasty? This is a good morning to sleep in. What is it? There's only one thing that's ever attracted me to this whole mess. It's Jesus. Not the big man upstairs, not the God over there, not the theology. It's this. Oh, I'm telling you, Jesus is so You got to see him, man. You got to get to know him, friend. Somehow we've got to describe him adequately to you. Somehow if you could know his heart, if you could one time experience his embrace, if you could ever, just bathe in his presence and experience his forgiveness and know that everything is okay. If that could happen just one time to you, you'd say, you would never get over that, man. If you could just see him. If you could just experience his forgiveness. If you could just know that in the midst of a chaotic world, everything is okay because he is the powerful one. And you sense that power coming out of him and emanating from his mind and his heart. If that could be, if you could experience that, you would be so, yes, you would embrace him and never, ever let go. If that could happen. In the midst of your confusion, if you could just one time, just for a split second, have the mind of Christ and literally think his thoughts and see what he sees and get his perspective. Do you understand? You would be so captured by that captured by his very mind, captured by his very perspective, that you'd say, yes, yes. You'd crave that for the rest of your life. In the midst of a world that's filled with hate, folks, in the midst of everybody bickering and fighting and out to get you, and with all the hidden agendas and all the cons that are out there, if you could for one moment look into his eyes and see there is no con here. He has an absolute down to it, death to self, pour your life out, die to yourself kind of concept, kind of reality, where he is literally laying down his life for you, and you are safe with him. If you could ever, one time, I propose to you, how are we going to win this community here? Remodel our building. They'll love to come. The carpet's already dirty. We just put it down. That isn't. If we want our building to be nice, keep them away. The fewer people that come, the less carpet traffic there is. It isn't going to be remodeling. What's going to... I'm telling you, it isn't going to be free pizza. I'm telling you, it isn't. It isn't going to be the music. It isn't going to be the preaching. Folks, we got one chance. There's only one thing that's attractive that would just draw people that I want to, embrace. I want to hold on. It's Jesus. It's Jesus. I probably told you this before, but he's the only thing in my life that the more I experience him, the bigger he gets. Everything else in my life, the more I experience it, the smaller, the more puny, it shrinks. Come on. Think back to when you're 16. If I could just drive. Could I back the car up and forth in the driveway? If I could just, it's a big deal. Now, you drive. I'd rather have you drive than listen to your backseat driving. Not referring to my wife. You thought that was a joke, didn't you? See, it's shrunk. I used to go into churches and go, whoa, this is huge. Now the pastor said, let me show you the sanctuary. I've seen sanctuaries. Sanctuaries are sanctuaries. What happened? It shrunk. Everything in think about it. Everything in my life, the more I experience it, the smaller it gets, See, I used to think $50 was a lot. Now, what happened to it? It shrunk, folks. The thing shrunk. Are you getting that? The only thing in my life that just gets, the more I handle him, the more I get involved with him, the bigger he gets. And whoa. And you would think at this stage of my life, I'd say, well, yeah, I got a PhD in this. No, I think I'm just maybe getting out of sandbox. Because it's so, this thing is so, wow. He is so. You remember the story of Chronicles of Narnia and the Lucy was at night, I think it was Lucy, here's her name called. They're sleeping, they've been in battle, and they're wondering where Aslan is, and the lion, the symbol of Jesus, and they're just, they're sleeping there, and finally getting some rest in the middle of the night, and of course she hears her name called, and when she hears her name called, she thinks, oh, it's my dad, but of course that couldn't be because he's not in Narnia, and then she goes back to sleep, hears her name called, and she thinks it's Peter, but of course it isn't Peter because the voice is too deep, and finally she goes back to sleep and hears her name called, and finally she gets up, and the name is calling her, and she begins to follow the call of her name. She goes into this woods, goes through the woods, and comes to this clearing, and the moon is shining down like a spotlight right on Aslan, the symbol of Christ, the great lion. There he is. And she runs up, of course, and grabs him around the neck, and they romp and play and roll together and just have a big time. And finally, when they're tired of that, she gets up, brushes her clothes off, looks at Aslan and says, "You're bigger than I remember." And he says, "No, my child, you're just older." See, the older you get, the bigger he appears. He alone is like that. Here is a man. Jesus has phenomenally affected his life. And in that effect, he is reaching out, grabbing a hold of, holding on to, will not turn loose. I got really interested in this word being used in the book of the Revelation. When Jesus is speaking to the churches, it's used in a positive sense, it's used in a negative sense. For instance, in Revelation 2:1, and we'll put them on the screen for you. In Revelation 2:1, these things say he who holds, karatero, holds the 7 stars in his right hand, who walks in the midst of the 7 golden candlesticks. Jesus holds, has held on to this word used to describe. Look at chapter 2, verse 13. And he, talking to the church, you hold fast to my name. He's congratulating them. This is what I want you to do. I want you to karatero me. I want you to hold on to my name. Grasp, remain, firmly cling to. Don't let go. Wrap your arms around my name. It's used in a negative sense in chapter 2, verse 15, where Jesus says, you hold, karatero, the doctrine of the Nicolaitans, which thing I hate. He says in chapter 2, verse 25, but hold fast what you have till I come. Look at Revelation 3:11. Behold, I am coming quickly. Hold fast what you have, that no one take your crown. It's a strong emphasis to the church. Come on, hold on, folks. Grab a hold of. Get a hold of this. Jesus. This word is not used in Psalms 40, verse 8, but I want to read it to you anyhow, because the whole intent of that psalm is this same concept. I delight to do your will, oh my God, and your law is within my heart. In fact, Psalm 73, verse 25 and 26, same intent. Whom have I in heaven but you? And there is none upon earth that I desire beside you. My flesh and my heart fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. Second thing, adjustment. There is an adjustment in the passage that's absolutely necessary. We got to get to this. You got to get this. Absolutely necessary. In the passage, the holding on to, cartero, is in the present tense, which means it's continual. And you say, well, sure, the guy had a miracle. So, yeah, he's all wrapped up. Yeah, he's all involved. Wow, this is a big deal. Man, for 40 years, he's been lame. For 40 years, he's been on his mat begging. And now, man, he's on his feet. He's running around. This is a big deal. Sure, he's all stirred up. Sure, he's all excited. Wow, he's holding on to them. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I would too if I got a miracle like that. But it won't last. Why do you say that? Oh, come on. You know what's going to happen to the guy. Come on, think. You know good and well what's going to happen to him. Now that he's running around, what's he going to do the next morning? Well, he's going to get his mat. That afternoon, he'll go at the hour of prayer, and he'll go down there and start. No, he can't beg now. He's not crippled. The whole lifestyle of the guy's changed. Begging is out now. So his whole life's work that he's become really skilled at and really good at is gone. Do you realize he's going to have to get sandals? You got to have money to have sandals. The guy's going to have to get a job. Oh, brother. Either that or take up preaching, one of the two. So here, he can't. This is terrible. The guy's going to have to begin to take responsibility. The guy's going to have to begin to, they're going to want him to carry out the trash. And then they're going to want him, we need to, and then they're going to have to, and then he's going to, and you give him about 2 months, and all of a sudden this miracle thing that he had is a nice memory back there. But man, there's so many complications that have come into his life and his job, and he's got a flat tire, and now he's got to get this, and then, I didn't get insurance on my vehicle. Oh, brother. And then he's got, and the whole life is going to get so complicated that the miracle it fades. Because that's back there. Well, why do you feel like that, Manley? Because, come on, that's exactly what happened to us. Listen, I was guilty. God moved upon my life. I ran to an altar of prayer. I felt such peace and forgiveness. Oh, it was so wonderful. And this Jesus thing, this is great. I was so excited. And I began to sit up front, and I began to sing, and I began to raise my hand, and I began to clap, and I began to, wow, this is so great. This is so wonderful. But, there's this, and then the church, and then I did it. And then we had to, brother, and then the kids are squalling. We don't want to go. And finally I dragged in, sit on the back, and look at my watch. Now the singing isn't. And we get over it. And I propose to you, I was 17, had my first church. Wasn't really that big of a deal. We had an outhouse. I remember that. We did have electricity. And there was about 15 old ladies there. And there was a retired preacher that had kept the church alive. And they, wow, what could I hurt, So they gave it to me, and so we were planning our first revival. Oh, this was going to be great. I was so excited. This is the first revival of the first pastorate. And, man, we're going to win the whole community. Man, get ready. We scrubbed the place down. We cleaned everything up. We were just, wow. And I preached like fire and spit everywhere, and we were just going. And that was a Sunday morning before revival, and we were starting that coming week. And, well, this is going to be great. And, folks, I want you to invite, and we're going to be here, And I was just at it, and, and finally said the benediction, ran down the aisle, stood at the door, shook hands with people as they were going out. Oh, I'm counting on you, keep praying, and da-da-da-da-da. And, we're just excited all over. And I watched while this retired guy, he kind of held back and waited for everybody to go out. And after everybody was gone, he came up to me. And never will forget, he looked me right in the eye, kind of leaned back, and he kind of aimed down his nose. He could do that. It was equal to mine, And he kind of aimed down his nose and looked at me. And here's what he said to me. You'll get over it. And I said, what'd you say? Because I didn't register what's he talking about. Didn't click. I couldn't put it together. He leaned back and said, you'll get over it. And I didn't click. It didn't come together for me. And so I just shook his hand and said, wow, we're going to have a great time. We'll be praying. You'll be praying. I know you'll be here a while. And he went off, and I went away shaking my head. And I found out what he meant. See, what he was saying is, I have gotten over it. Now, if you're talking about a revival meeting and you had great hopes and people didn't come and the whole thing died, hey, we can get over it. If you're talking about a miracle, yeah, that fades in the past, and yeah, that was back then, and wow, I needed it then, it was really nice then, but hey, that fades, and here I am now, and all these complications now, that's true. But that's the adjustment of the passage, folks. That's what's happening in the passage. You see, there's adjustment going on in the passage from the focus on a miracle and a guy running around because he's got a miracle to a focus on Jesus. See, that happens dramatically in the sermon itself. Do you see that? Peter in verse 12, this guy is holding on to Peter and John, and all the people are running together to the porch, which is called Solomon's, greatly amazed. And Peter saw it. He responded to the people, men of Israel, why do you marvel at this? Why do you look so intently at us? Why are you holding on to me, boy? As though by our own power or godliness we made this man walk? No, no, no. You've got the, no, if you're focused on the miracle, this is going to fade. If you're focused on me, this is going to fade. Hey, you'll get mad because I'll do something. You can count on it. If you're focused on me, if you're focused on the miracle, and then he distinctly in the sermon points them back to Jesus and says, and this guy, I'm absolutely convinced that this guy got wrapped up in Jesus. He focused everybody back on Jesus, and 5,000 men got saved. Hey, focus on Jesus. Hey, focus on Jesus. Well, it was too hot in there this morning. Hey, focus on Jesus. The drums were too loud. Hey, focus on Jesus. Hey, do you know what they said? Focus on Jesus. Hey, focus on Jesus. The carpet's dirty. Hey, focus on Jesus. Hey. And I promise you, you will come Sunday after Sunday after Sunday going, whoa, wow, oh. Because that will build and that will grow and he will get bigger and he will marvel you and he will absolutely knock your socks off and he will become so big in your life you'll walk around and people will be hating you and talking about you and will say, do you know they? And you say, really? Didn't notice. Whoa. If I were going into counseling, the first thing I'd do is I would say to every individual, focus on Jesus. and your problems begin to disappear. Ignore them and focus on Jesus. Folks, I never had victory in my life over temptation until I focused on Jesus. Because when you focus on the temptation, it gets bigger. And the bigger it gets, the more it tempts you. And the more it tempts you, the more inclined you are to give in. And then you have to focus on temptation to resist the bigger temptation. And then it gets bigger yet. And when it gets bigger, it tempts you more. So you have to focus more to resist. So it's a vicious circle. It's going to bite you. You can count on it. There's only one way. Oh, focus on Jesus, and it shrinks. Jesus, you are phenomenal. And yeah, I do feel like a failure. Who could describe you? Who could put words to this thing? Who could paint the picture big enough? I only know, Lord, that in holding on to you, absolute, not theology, holding on to you, not church movement, holding on to you, not church programming, holding on to you, not church theology, holding on to you. Please take your face and jam it into our eyeballs until we can't see anything but you. Please expand our vision of your person. You are so attractive. I am running today to hold on to you. Firmly grip, clinging to, joining and participating in you and more of you. And for those of us here today who are hurting, who are experiencing depression, who are under it, could we see you? Could we kneel together today, dear Jesus? Could you just capture us? Could you, the person in the midst of our guilt, could you capture us? In the midst of the pressure, could you capture us? In the midst of the confusion, could you capture us? In the midst of the hurt, could you capture us? Would you capture us? Heads are bowed. He is worthy. He is magnificent. He is majestic. He is marvelous. He is my lover. He is my soulmate. He is my strength, my power, my peace. To be bathed in Him is to be bathed in armor that wards off all the fiery darts of the evil one. Would you just go after Him? Would you just hold on to Him? Would you just run up to Him today? Oh, He wants to live within you. Would you embrace the Jesus that's within you and find Him embracing you? And in the intimacy of that embrace, find what you need. I invite you to Jesus today. Altars open. Moments of embracing. You wouldn't mind if I went again to the altar, would you? And embraced him anew. What a privilege.